What's going on, folks? Here we are again, and I'm so excited about this next portion of the dual cert challenge that we have set out for you. This is for the AIP, the AI Practitioner certification, that foundational cert that you can get after you've accomplished that Cloud Practitioner cert. And so here we are, ready to dive into it. We've been waiting on it.
Yeah, let's get it. Let's get it.
Let's do it. Okay. And I really want to discuss the why, coach, right? I want to tell people why I'm so passionate about folks passing this exam, especially if you come from a background like I did, where some of this IT stuff seems a little tough, seems a little difficult, and maybe you don't realize that it's not that difficult, right? You just got to jump into it. And that's pretty much my why. I see AI coming through in so many different industries, and I see so many people being affected by it. And really what you need to do is get ahead of the curve. And I think I learned that a lot from Coach. I used to work with Coach in commercial at AWS. And that's one of the things Coach Charisma taught me. You got to look at the data. And once you see the data and where it's pointing, you need to act fast. And so this is an opportunity for us to act fast, right?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I love the analogy of riding the wave, right? And I've surfed a little bit here and there, right? Growing up in San Diego, but at the end of the day, it's really about using the momentum that's out there and that's behind you to either leap ahead or at least ride that wave so that you're not having to constantly catch up. I like to often say, stay ready so you don't have to get ready. That's also another factor there. At the end of the day, a lot of this content or a lot of the information that we're providing you all, hopefully you find that valuable in just having the conversation, right? Oftentimes it's just breaking down the mental barriers that we tend to have for ourselves and feeling that we can't do it, or who am I to think that I can jump into this field, or who am I to think that I can be at the seat at the table and have a conversation around cloud security or cloud economics or migrating to the cloud or anything else that falls within that spectrum. And the reality is all of this is about providing a need, solving a business problem, providing insight and availability to information and content that's readily available. But sometimes we just don't know where to go to, and we don't know who to ask the questions of. So this is also part of the why we're here.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so, of course, another why is to prepare you for the exam. And just very briefly, let's take a look at what you should expect when you go into the exam. And then we really want to talk about some hot topics here, because there's been some hot topics going around with AI, like DeepSeek and things like that, but we'll jump right into it. But what I want to show you really quickly is the exam guide. And there's just a few things that we want to hit with the exam guide. So I want to share that screen, and I want to zoom in a bit. Hope that's large enough for folks to see. Just an introduction to the exam really quickly, and we did this on day one of this dual cert prep certification, but it's just the general ideas around AI as a whole, just the general concepts that we want to hit. So we'll go through that throughout the domains. We won't take the time to just deep dive into the domains just yet, but I wanted to come here so you can see who the ideal candidate is for something like this, right? Notice that the first bullet point is talking about recommended AWS knowledge. We've already taken you through the Cloud Practitioner, right? If you've gone through that journey, you've skilled yourself up with some of the general AWS services, then you've prepared yourself to come down this journey. So this is the ideal candidate. If you're still tackling some of those things, keep studying, right? And keep watching the videos that we're presenting. And maybe these real use cases can connect the dots with you. And so just understanding identity and access management, global infrastructure things, that's the target candidate. So it's not that deep, folks. Things that are out of scope. And I really wanted to hit this one too, so that you get a very clear view that you are in scope, right? If you're worried about developing and coding, don't worry about it. That's out of scope, right? If you're concerned about really optimizing the model for this particular certification, that is out of scope. So you don't have to be too dangerous when you consider what we're about to dive into. And you do need to implement some security when you think about the concepts of deploying some model and using it as a part of some pipeline as you're going through the course, but you don't really have to implement that in a very practical way. And so you can see that as the second bullet point here. Just trying to drive home the point is that you can do this, right? You're prepared. Use this exam guide to realize that you're the one who needs to sit down in that seat and take that exam, right? Just to prepare yourself for AI.
Yeah. Can I plug in something here for a quick
Absolutely.
minute? So one of the things around the task that we're seeing here and the scope of the target candidate, Similar to the foundational aspect of the different AWS services, right, such as S3 databases, it's really about, again, helping you understand the foundation. And I can't stress that enough. The foundation is around terminology, around understanding the use cases, understanding the business need, understanding the business problems, understanding security as an aspect of this, understanding cost optimization, understanding availability and reliability, and all those things that we talked about with the well architected framework and the pillars associated with that. Sustainability plays a factor into this. The reality when it comes to AI, number one, is that you've got to understand what is it doing for us, right? We'll talk about how I tend to look at AI now is really my own personal assistant, right? I don't know how many of you may have an Alexa device in your home, but Alexa plays a very big, huge, even my new vacuum, it's not new anymore, but I've got a vacuum upstairs and a vacuum downstairs, right? And I simply say, go vacuum, right? And it does that. Or go turn on the
Sweet.
oven at this degree, right? It goes and does that for me. So
Yes.
I am constantly shifting my mindset as to become more AI first focused. We'll talk
Nice.
more about that as we go through these series of videos with you or recordings with you. But at the end of the day, what I want to stress here is how do we look at this as a job aid? How do we look at AI, not fearing AI, but looking at it as a way of upskilling, reskilling, taking years that you may have had in industry, or maybe you're just jumping into the industry, giving yourself a step up in the way of being able to say, oh, you know what? If I can search for this on Google, then I can probably prompt it as a within the model. And we'll talk more about what that looks like in just simply asking the question. And the beautiful thing about AI is that we'll talk about some of the ways that we approach this. And my favorite right now is chain of thought. And we'll talk about the reasons why, because now this model, I can tell it to tell me why you're thinking of it this way. What's your reasoning behind your outcome? And in some cases, we'll see how the model can potentially, and I'm probably even using terms right now, you're probably wondering, what is Charisma talking about model? What is she talking about with model? She keeps talking about model. We'll get into that. Don't worry about
Absolutely.
it. Trust me. But all it is another way of you being able to engage with this large brain, if you want to think about it that way.